We asked our viewers to vote on the top 10 Green Lanterns, and today we're going to discuss the results. Before we get into that, be sure to subscribe to Comic Island for more videos on all things comic books. Number 10, Sinestro. First up is a fun choice that already left me very encouraged about how this fan-voted top 10 list was going to turn out. Sinestro got a spot in the top 10 from the very beginning of voting, though he was eventually crowded out by the rest of the best Green Lanterns we'll talk about shortly, and thus we find him as our 10th best Green Lantern overall. I'm going to tell you all right now, I do agree with most of this top 10, including this result. Sinestro obviously isn't the greatest Green Lantern ever, in that he abandoned the Corps and formed a rival organization that has slaughtered many other Lanterns over the years. Yet it's okay for this character because of his history and time with the Green Lanterns being an essential part to understanding this villain that really showcase how this character originally rose up in the ranks of the Green Lantern Corps and why this top 10 would have felt incomplete without him. Simon Baz of Earth. You have the ability to overcome great fear. Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps. I'm glad Simon made the list, as he's a character I've always liked, though I won't pretend there weren't growing pains in the history of this character. The fact of the matter is, the first impression I've got of Simon was on this page, which felt clumsy at the time and is dated as hell now. And writer Geoff Johns, he is what he is. His perspective and ability to write something like this was always going to be limited. Nevertheless, Johns didn't do a bad job with this character. The idea of Simon being sought out as a rough approximation of Sinestro and Hal Jordan's respective personalities combined kind of made this character interesting from the beginning. It's easy to understand why he was chosen as a Green Lantern, and goes a long way to inform why, early on, Simon Baz insisted on carrying a gun and promptly used it to shoot Sinestro in the head. I bring this moment up a lot, but it's one of those defining moments of a character, like how Guy Gardner got knocked out by Batman in a single punch. Simon and related Green Lantern stories generally feel very practical and grounded, owing to his character, which was established from the very beginning. Geoff Johns actually brought a lot of his own backstory as a person growing up in Detroit, and used it to inform Simon's history, giving Simon a really authentic feel to him that works well in making him a strong character that's been refined and used in a number of fun stories over the years, leading to a well-rounded character that also diversifies the brand ever so slightly. While he definitely ranked lowest out of all the main human Green Lanterns among fan voting, Simon Baz still absolutely deserves having secured a spot on this top 10, and it's quite an achievement given the competition. Number 8, MOGO. I was so happy to see that MOGO did quite well in the voting. By far, one of the biggest names among the least traditional of the Green Lanterns, this is a fun, creative character who ranks among my personal favorites, too. He's the source of many great Green Lantern moments and stories over the years. It's a fun character with complex notions behind him, and there's a certain sense of altruism and innocence to MOGO that makes him very unique in the world of sentient planets as depicted in fiction. It also gives MOGO a certain sense in the stories that I desperately don't want anything bad to happen to this planet, almost as if he were like a dog or a puppy in another fictional story, except for, a little bigger than that. I talk a lot about MOGO and my feelings concerning this character in 2 videos, which go over the history of the character, and you can watch those by clicking the button in the top right corner of the screen. Suffice to say, I really like MOGO, his enormous power, his overall character, but it should be noted that while MOGO exists as an excellent part of Green Lantern lore, and as a sort of secondary character, he really wouldn't work as a focal point in a permanent, ongoing series. MOGO's simply too big, and his personality too passive, for that sort of thing to really even interest me as a possibility. Partly because MOGO is as much a setting as he is a character. So I think it's right that MOGO ranked somewhere around the 8th spot. Clearly one of the best Green Lanterns out there, but not at the absolute top.
Jessica Cruz, you have the ability to overcome great fear.
Number 7, Jessica Cruz. And now we get to yet another one of my favorites, although to be fair, pretty much every character from here on out is a core part of Green Lantern history. Jessica is relatively new from that perspective, but has always been different and always been unique and interesting. Unlike most other Green Lanterns, Jessica's experience becoming one was very traumatic and downright horrifying. That, coupled with her ongoing struggle with anxiety, means that every victory Jessica has is that much more of a triumph. Every upset, that much more of an uphill battle. It's a very simple idea to pair a character riddled with fears and anxiety against a set of superpowers all about standing up to those fears. But it's a brilliant idea for a character. And one of those ideas you can't believe wasn't more of a thing in Green Lantern history until Geoff Johns presented the idea. For all the flaws people ascribe to Geoff Johns, he did have a lot of great Green Lantern characters and concepts, and is by far the biggest influence on this top 10. If you ask me, Jessica is easily one of his best ideas in an already hefty mountain of Green Lantern characters and concepts Geoff Johns introduced to the world. In the right hands, Jessica is not only a fantastic character, but also one that feels very needed, not just in the world of superheroes, but in pop culture in general.
You're a ring. You don't know dick.
The Star Heart.
Number 6, Alan Scott. It's quite funny that Alan Scott, the original Green Lantern, only makes it to the number 6 spot on this list. It makes sense and is actually a huge achievement for Alan Scott, given how his character has been used and occasionally ignored throughout Green Lantern and DC history, especially relative to someone like Hal Jordan. But still, it's funny to think about. Imagine if that were true of Bruce Wayne or Steve Rogers or any number core central superhero that's been around since the beginning. So it's great that our fans gave Alan Scott so much well-deserved love during the voting. He's a fun character that's distinct from the other Green Lanterns for quite a few reasons. The biggest one is Alan's ring is magic-based and not really part of the core at all. He's also gay and usually associated with a different era of American history entirely. This all compounds in a character with a fun place in the world and history of Green Lantern. The JSA as a whole is quite interesting, and it's great to see that DC is increasingly making use of them again. It's also interesting to see how he was used in classic comics with all the goofiness, and how that's evolved into the character we see 80 years later in the anniversary issue, who's now complex, subtle, nuanced, and still the best of the best when it comes to having the traits of a real superhero. Hopefully, Alan's future as a character is as bright and storied as it has been in the past.
Use more raw power, and Earth has a third Green Lantern, Guy Gardner.
No.
But we could really...
No.
Number 5, Guy Gardner. Gardner took 5th place with only a handful of votes above Alan Scott, with this part of the top 10 ultimately representing the closest part of the competition. There's a lot of love for Guy Gardner, and I think it's well earned. At first glance, Guy is your typical superhero archetype, representing a tough, gruff, borderline anti-hero. His attitude is so famous it has essentially become the defining element of this character, and thus always being an entertaining element of any team he happens to be placed in. This has led to a number of great and complicated relationships and stories over the years. Gardner has spent a lot of time with other superheroes and lanterns across the emotional spectrum, leading to all sorts of cool ideas. Among my favorites are classics like his time on the Justice League of America, or even more recent ideas like Gardner joining up with the Red Lanterns, or becoming partner to Yellow Lantern Arkillo, with whom Gardner still has a great friendship featuring a strong sense of mutual respect. Line that up with even half of the other crazy things Gardner has done over the years, and it's easy to see why he's such a beloved and respected character.
That I'd like to see! One punch! One punch!
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight.
Number 4, KILOWOG. This is a solid choice overall. KILOWOG got a lot of votes and ranked pretty heavily even among strong candidates like Guy Gardner, which is no small feat given how, relatively speaking, KILOWOG isn't featured or used nearly as much as some of the other characters he beat out. Yet I would consider him about as essential as a part of the Green Lantern Corps as any character on this list, if not more so, given his role as the Drill Sergeant of the Corps, implicitly establishing this relationship with most members of the organization where, in theory, he's trained virtually every recruit and new member out there. His personality very much sort of fits the typical sergeant personality with a heart of gold. It's not unique in the world of fiction or characters like this, but that doesn't feel like an issue, especially when KILOWOG is one of the best examples of that archetype. I'm glad he's not only got a spot here, but in a really high position at that.
Those who worship evil's might, beware my power. Green Lantern's light.
Ow!
Number 3, Kyle Rayner. Any fan of Green Lantern should not only have expected Kyle to show up on this top 10, but it should have been a pretty safe assumption that he would be a heavy contender for the top position. Kyle very nearly took the number 2 spot, but in the end was just barely beaten out and is ranked here at number 3. This is a great character, and I'm not afraid to hide the fact that he was my personal choice for number 1. There was a time when Kyle carried the entire franchise on his back, and it wasn't a bad time for Green Lantern comics, even if there were flaws to those stories here and there. Kyle also happens to have been a member of my favorite iteration of the Justice League to date. Since then, Rayner's also had some cool roles to fill, ranging from being the White Lantern to serving as the Green Lantern representative of the New Guardians. This is a fun character whose background as an artist makes him capable of developing great constructs. In fact, all 3 of the top Green Lanterns are each capable of using their powers and Green Lantern ring in unique ways, which likely is no coincidence. It's stuff like that which really helps make a character stand out, and stand out Kyle did.
You won't be able to do it.
I can.
You do not have the will.
No? Watch.
Number 2, Hal Jordan. Oh yes, this one surprised me. But in reality, Hal Jordan just barely got this spot over Kyle, and never really stood a chance at taking first place, which honestly blew my mind. It means a lot of exciting things for our winner, but let's not discount the value and importance of Hal Jordan either, or make it about why he didn't win. Hal is a great character overall that has been used well across a long and rich history of comics. This goes from classic stuff with him debating politics with Green Arrow and Denny O'Neil's work, all the way back in the 70s, up into the Jeff Johns era where Hal became the major figurehead of a growing universe of Green Lantern content, and right into the Grant Morrison era, where all his weirdness really pushed the character in a new and different direction. Hal, in spite of his flaws and certainly some questionable decisions over the years, works as a sort of legend among the Green Lanterns, with his infamous moments even adding to that legend. I find the character is at his best when forced to stand alone, either as the last man standing at the end of an epic Jeff Johns event, the only one who can ever seem to topple most of the biggest threats that showed up during that time period, or on his own little journey like when the Green Lanterns disappeared a while back, lost to a completely different universe, and Hal was the sole Green Lantern left behind. Morrison has similarly zeroed in on Hal Jordan, and the benefits of that have really come clear. But he never really deserved to win by default, and I don't disagree with him coming in second place, given who won.
I'll say it. This is awkward.
This isn't my choice, Hal.
Feeling is mutual.
Number 1, Jon Stewart. It was a really happy surprise to see Jon was the clear winner of our informal little poll, and was pretty consistently voted as such from start to finish. Jon wasn't ranked at number 1 on everybody's list, although he was voted as such on plenty. But what really secured his victory is just about every single person voted for him in some form or another, leading to a mountain of votes that propelled Jon to the top and maintained him at that position. And it's a pretty great result overall in my eyes. Across many different forms of media and adaptations, Jon Stewart has been the introduction of the Green Lanterns to millions, And when DC finally does get around to making a proper Green Lantern movie, it will probably be one that features Jon Stewart, making this result all the more important going forward and all the more likely to stay that way if we were to do this voting again in, say, 10 years. Jon's a cool character beyond all the fun stuff he's been in as well, while Hal Jordan has his interesting experience as a pilot to inform his constructs, and Kyle Rayner has his background as an artist. Jon's a military engineer, and some of the stuff he's been able to do with his ring is so damn cool. Even without the military thing, his long association working with specific elements of the Green Lantern Corps, and even in that series, makes him a very cool character that's able to do a lot of cool stuff with his ring. It also leads to a very reserved and deductive personality, which works well in just about any series, making Jon a distinct and interesting character. And thanks to Phil Lamar so consistently doing a great job at voicing this character over so many years, Jon has a certain voice that's really exciting to listen to.
We can't let that stop us from doing our job. We aren't here to be liked. We're here to make the world a safer place.
So there you have it, the shocking end results of our poll that I was just so excited to go over. I do have to say there was one character that didn't even really get that close to the top 10, but I personally voted for, and a handful of others did, and I want to give a special shout out here. And that's Tom Taylor's version of Black Canary in Deceased, who gained the power of the Green Lantern ring early on, and is just such a cool idea overall. I really like that character, but very much understand why she wasn't on the top 10 on the whole. I just wanted to give her a special shout out here. If there's any other characters you think should have been on this top 10, feel free to leave a comment below and let me know what you thought our viewers mixed. Next up, we're going to go a little negative as we dig into the New 52 and look at the worst comics they've ever made. Oh boy, what have I gotten myself into with that one? It's a real nightmare. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for that, and if there's any other top 10s, you can also leave a comment below with that idea. We always record viewer requests and have hundreds of cool ideas to make one day, I guess. So feel free to leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time here on Comic Island.